Hi, I'm Lana Kelly, and this is It's Your Move, and thank you for tuning in today. We're going to be talking to Donna Ponessa, who is my colleague and an advocate for people with a disability, and our topic is the Olmstead Decision, and it makes a difference in the lives of people who have a disability, and we're going to be talking about Donna's experience. And welcome, Donna.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So the Olmstead Decision has to do with long-term care or avoiding long-term care facilities for a person who has a disability.
Pretty much. It started initially as, a Supreme Court decision, which basically gave people who had psychiatric disability and intellectual disabilities the right to live in the community in a lesser restricted environment. And what it really did was it actually strengthened the teeth of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It was piggybacked off of the ADA. And we as disability advocates do use it as, teeth to be able to say that, hey, people with disabilities, should they choose, have the right to live in the community, aka a lesser restricted environment.
Mm-hmm. So at one point in your life, you were faced with the possibility of going into a nursing home or a long-term care facility, and managed to prevent that from happening. Could you address that? Because that was before the Olmstead Decision?
Just before, yes.
Yeah.
And I was in my early 30s and had just spent almost 2 years in a hospital and a rehab facility, and I was quadriplegic on a ventilator, and people like me, I was told, and my family and friends were told, don't go back and live in the community. And being in independent living at the time and a proponent of independent living and quality of life, personal choice for people with disabilities, I said I wouldn't go. And I pretty much was told I didn't have a choice, and that my parents were told that if they were foolish enough to bring somebody like me home, they would have the responsibility of caring for me. And that really, in addition to being personally just overwhelmed, I just couldn't imagine being 30 years old, college educated, and going to a nursing home. So I kind of reached out to my independent living colleagues and friends and my circle of support, who always knew me as Donna, and we kind of devised a plan. And I went up against, we're in the informal conference, and I was speaking with the people who were telling me that I needed to go down to this place on Long Island, and explaining to them how my quality of life would be much better if I were allowed to live in the community. And regarding the thing that my elderly parents would have to assume my care, I actually asked them to produce legislation that showed where an adult child, parents had any responsibility over an adult child for their care, and obviously there is none. And I talked about how I wanted to do something with my life and go back to work and things, and they were still on the fence. And actually what swayed them was when I was able to show that even with a significant amount of home care and other services, it was still more cost effective to allow me to return home. And again, not wanting to look like I was taking things over, I was like, and look, and I would give it a try. And if it didn't work, I would always have, then I could be sent to a nursing facility. And it was agreed, and I came home in early February 1990.
So how did it work out?
It worked out amazing. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't without its trials and tribulations, and believe it or not, there were times that I thought maybe I did bite off more than I could chew, because it was hard being reliant on others, not relations, but paid help to do your care, and then want to make something of yourself. But I did. A year later, I was back to work. I I've always been very athletic and competitive. Pre and then post disability, I was able to get back into competitive sports, work full time, drive. I helped my sister, who's a single parent, raise her kids. I actually did, I played competitive wheelchair tennis, and then I actually went to the Paralympics in 2012. I was selected to the United States team to represent our country at the London Olympics in para-dressage, which is dressage.
Which is so impressive.
It's,
Which is so impressive that,
Yeah.
that you are, you're a horseback rider.
Yes.
And a champion horseback rider. You've competed internationally. You've been, I know you've been to Mexico, you've been to London.
to Australia.
Australia. That's very impressive. And if you hadn't you know, put your foot down and say, no, I am not going to spend my life in a nursing home,
None of
these
this
things
would have happened.
Right.
None of it would have been possible. And I remember going to see the facility, and again, I really didn't know what I was in for. I thought maybe it was going to be like an assisted living, so I asked about, I'm like, so what do people do all day here?
Yeah.
And she says, oh, we have recreation programs, and you can make pottery, and we have classes, and you color, and we have group activities. And I was like, and I said, but I want to go back to work. And she actually chuckled. And I remember the sick feeling in my stomach on what, I'm too young, I'm only 30.
Yeah.
What is this going to be like? So, you know, I'm so thankful that, you know, I had the independent living centers, I had my circle of support, I had, you know, legislators who, you know, attested to my proficiency and, you know, just took off. And now it's different, because now people who are facing the prospect of institutionalization, you know, have the Americans with Disabilities Act, have the Olmstead Act, the Olmstead Decision to fall back on.
How does that make it easier, Donna?
It makes it easier because now it's more than just a personal choice and a desire. Now it's a, you know, it's a federal decision. It's the law. The least restricted environment you have, you know, is on the forefront. And what we need to do though now more is educate, not only educate those people who live in facilities as to their rights as a nursing home participant, but also the discharge planners, also the, you know, the community service providers. They need to understand that there's advances in medical technology, there's advances in medicine that has so improved the quality of life for people with disabilities. And let's face it, the ADA has made the world a more accessible place. There are curb cuts, there are, you know, the blinking to cross the street.
Right.
There's a lot of physical accessibility. So if we're making the world more accessible for people with disabilities, why is it that we're still choosing to institutionalize them? Let's get them out in the community.
Right. Are the institutions, the places where people with disabilities might wind up, long-term care facilities, are they supportive of this, or are they, do they need more facts or more education on the topic?
Since the Medicaid waiver programs have been around, they've been a little more receptive to it. Initially, when we started really pushing for the deinstitutionalization of these people, they were, from an economic view, they were worried that we were going to shut them down. And once they realized that there was always enough business, that wasn't an issue. And you know, now we can kind of, the tide is changing and people are more receptive to it. And you know, to ride that tide, we need to make sure that we keep up with making sure that there's enough available community resources and services so that when these people are exercising their right to leave the facility, we have the community-based supports. Because let's face it, somebody who needs physical care and needs the support, they're not going to they're not going to thrive in the community if we don't have the supports to take care of them.
Right. And what about the families? What does that mean to the families of individuals?
The families need to understand that, you know, I'm always amazed that when we try to care for people with disabilities, we try to keep them so safe, and that failure is just such a word that we can't use. And I always say that, you know, disability is just, it's a component of who you are. We as people with disabilities have the right to determine where we want to go with our life, and it's okay if we fail. And nobody is ever 100% safe, disabled or not, in any situation. So we need to be reasonably cautious to make sure that we set up safeguards that will ensure the welfare and health, but we can't go so far as to stigmatize them and take away their ability to take that assumed risk, because disabled or not, we all do to some extent or another. And parents and families need to understand that it's that tempering the person's desire to be independent with acknowledging that they're entitled to their own quality of life.
Right. Donna, if somebody is dealing with a situation like this, how can they get in touch, or how can they find out what their rights are and what potentially services they might be able to get?
Well, I understand that you have had our website up on the screen.
Yeah, email
By all
too.
means, you can email us, you can go on the website, use the contact information, because we do have the Open Doors program, and we do have the waiver programs, and there's a lot of different community-based services that are available. And again, it's that using the local independent living center to access the basic information and get in that direction that you feel that you want to go.
Right. So that's great. I mean, you just gave us so much information that I feel comfortable that people will probably be contacting you or asking questions about this.
I hope so, because, you know, if you don't ask, I always say, sometimes I get very uncomfortable, and I always say that if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Right, right, right. And on that note, we're going to leave.
Okay.
Thanks so much for being here today and filling us in on what the Olmstead, what Olmstead means.
Thank you. It was my pleasure being here.